Good evening, I'm Chris Glover. Tonight, down to the final hours of campaigning for the Ontario election.
Very encouraged by the response that I've been getting at the doors.
People are engaged in this election.
I'm feeling incredible excitement and energy.
After a month on the trail, these party leaders are just about done their part of the marathon. Now it's up to voters. Plus,
these low rates are now gone. They're totally off the table.
The Bank of Canada boosts interest rates. We'll tell you how that's likely to impact your wallet. And
during this move is, a positive step in the right direction.
British Columbia will allow legal possession of some hard drugs. We're looking at whether Toronto could be next. Here we are, party leaders spending this last day of the campaign, making one final blitz for votes. Tomorrow, of course, is Election Day in Ontario. And let's get right to Lisa Shing at Metro Hall, one of the locations where people will be voting. And Lisa, that spot, like so many others, expected to see a steady stream of people tomorrow.
Yeah, likely, Chris. We could see a lineup. Signs definitely will be up, but keep in mind more than 1 million Ontarians have already cast their ballot in advance polling, and that represents about 10% of all people who are eligible. And that's, as you said, the party leaders are making that last push, at least some of them.
I'd like to introduce everyone to the next Premier of Ontario, Andrea Horwath.
A busy last day of campaigning for NDP leader Andrea Horwath. 7 stops in 5 different cities, including Brampton, Cambridge, Hamilton, and Toronto. She brought this message to voters.
I am asking people tomorrow, when you get to the ballot box, a vote for the NDP is a vote to stop the cuts. A vote for the NDP is a vote to hire nurses.
Horwath campaigned in PC-held ridings, not just speaking to her supporters, but voters who may be undecided.
We know that there are people that didn't choose us last time in those ridings, and if they do this time, we'll definitely be able to defeat Doug Ford.
Thank you very, very much.
A lighter schedule for Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca, whose 2 stops were in NDP-held ridings. As for whether he thinks he'll win the tight race in his own riding of Vaughan Woodbridge,
I feel strongly encouraged, but I never take anything for granted.
and if he doesn't, he made the answer clear this afternoon.
Regardless of the result tomorrow, I'm not going anywhere. We are just getting started. You want me to say it one more time? Yes. Regardless of the result tomorrow, I'm not going anywhere.
How's it going?
And an energetic last day for Green Party leader Mike Schreiner. Even though he visited several cities in southwestern Ontario, he still found time to tout the riding he's really hoping to pick up.
I'm feeling incredible excitement and energy and momentum for the Ontario Greens, not only here in London, but across the province, and especially in ridings like Parry Sound, Muskoka.
So as for PC leader Doug Ford, he's been keeping a very low profile. He hasn't answered reporter questions since Monday afternoon, and today he has just one event, and that's a rally in his own riding of Etobicoke North, Chris.
All right, thanks for this wrap, Lisa. All right, so of course, a lot is on the line for the party leaders with tomorrow's election. Let's bring in senior reporter Mike Crowley now to walk through what is at stake for each one of them. Mike, let's start with Doug Ford, the frontrunner certainly through this campaign. What will be his bar for success tomorrow night?
Well, look, Chris, Doug Ford simply has to win a majority tomorrow night. No other way. If he falls short of that magic 63 seats and only wins a minority, he's not going to last long as premier because all the other parties have vowed that they will not prop up a PC minority government. So clearly the stakes are huge, but if you listen to the Tories, they think the risks are pretty small. Ford's campaign staff are oozing confidence. They're telling me they're 98% certain that the PCs will win a majority as big as the one they had in the last election.
Okay, and how about Andrea Horwath, who I assume is certainly hoping fourth time is a charm here?
Look, Andrea Horwath has set a pretty high bar for herself over her career, and that's because in each of those 3 previous elections, she increased the NDP's seat count. But that means if she doesn't do it again on her 4th, it's going to be perceived as falling short. And certainly, if the Conservatives win another majority, even if the New Democrats form the official opposition, it's hard to see how Andrea Horwath lasts, another 4 years. Why would they put the same leader up against Doug Ford in a 3rd election after losing 2 straight?
Good point. Now, it's, of course, a very different story for Stephen Del Duca with the Liberals. He is in his first election as Liberal leader. Will the knives be out for him if the results are poor tomorrow night?
Look, Chris, I think that is definitely a possibility. There are two measures of success for Stephen Del Duca. One is how many seats the Liberals win, and the other is, do they win one seat in particular, and that is Vaughan Woodbridge, where Del Duca is running himself. If he does win his seat and he can point to some progress for the party and recovering from that devastating loss, he's going to be fine. So that means, increasing the seat count, increasing the Liberals' share of the vote, even if they don't come in second. But look, Stephen Del Duca, for him, the calculation changes dramatically if he doesn't win in his own riding. Now, we heard earlier Stephen Del Duca saying that he's staying on no matter what the result is, but I've been talking to Liberals, and what they're telling me is that the party's in third place, and Stephen Del Duca doesn't even have a seat in the legislature. It's going to be really tough for him to make the case for why he should stay on as leader, and he would have to face a mandatory leadership review within the next 2 years.
Okay, and what about the Green Party leader, Mike Schreiner? He has the least to lose, most to gain going into tomorrow night. What's at stake for him?
Yeah, the stakes aren't anywhere near as high for him so long as he keeps his seat in Guelph, and we haven't heard anything that suggests that he's in trouble in Guelph. Now, obviously, he would like to add at least one other Green MPP at Queen's Park. If the Green Party fails to do that, it's going to be disappointing for Mike Schreiner, but I don't see it causing any problems for his leadership.
All right, thanks so much, Mike. Tomorrow will be a fun night.
You're welcome, Chris.
So out of all of the issues during this election campaign, the cost of housing seems to have emerged as number one. For example, almost 24,000 people responded to the CBC's Vote Compass tool online, and housing came up as the top overall issue, especially among young voters. No surprise when you consider the price to buy a home here almost tripled in the past 10 years. Lorenda Redekop looks at what the parties are promising.
Do you like it?
Yeah, it's nice and quiet.
Sylvia Menezes-Roberts doesn't have an issue with where she lives in this Brampton townhouse complex. It's that it's with her mom, and she's 29.
Housing is so expensive here that the ability to move out just isn't there unless I'm renting a room in a house.
And you don't want to do that, do you?
It's like, if I'm going to rent a bedroom in a house, I might as well live with my family.
Okay.
Right?
On CBC's online Vote Compass tool, close to 1 in 5 reported the price of housing as their top issue this election. It was more, almost 1 in 3, for those under 30. All four party leaders commit to building 1.5 million homes in the next 10 years, a recommendation from the province's Affordable Housing Task Force.
More supply doesn't always equate to affordability because you have to keep in mind that the homes that are being built, they're vastly unaffordable for many folks.
The task force also recommended the end of exclusionary zoning, allowing up to 4plexes in residential neighborhoods. The NDP, Liberals and Greens say they'll do it.
We're going to put policies in place that spur that kind of development. Things like semi-detached homes, like duplexes, triplexes, townhouses.
We've got to do it closely in partnership with our municipal partners. That is the best way to produce what people living in existing neighborhoods want.
The Greens go further, promising to overrule municipalities opposing it. It doesn't appear in the PC plan.
We're going to look at attainable housing, working with families in certain income brackets, that they're going to have the support of the government, and we're going to continue building non-stop.
The PCs promised to tax foreign buyers. The Greens would tax anyone owning more than 2 homes.
The housing affordability crisis is in part being driven by deep-pocketed speculators that are buying up properties in unprecedented numbers.
The NDP and Liberals would both strengthen rent control, with the NDP prohibiting jacking up the price between tenants. The nonpartisan group More Housing scored all the housing plans. The Greens came out on top.
I will definitely go to the polls.
Menezes-Roberts hasn't decided yet who she'll vote for in what's considered a safe PC riding. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Brampton.
Regardless of all of those housing pledges, borrowing money to buy a home is about to get more expensive. The Bank of Canada has boosted its benchmark interest rate by another 0.5 percentage point, and more increases are expected as the central bank tries to fight inflation. But as Nisha Patel reports, those hikes need to be balanced against the effect they'll have on other areas of the economy.
This is the stuff that's driving us right now.
John Marsh is just getting his office supply business rolling again. He's been coping with supply chain slowdowns and higher costs for materials.
I spend most of my days walking my factory, looking at things on the shelves and saying, what next?
He also took out loans during the pandemic to keep his business afloat. Today's rate hike means his monthly payments will stretch him further.
Anything right now that makes it harder to recover is not a good thing.
Mortgage broker Samantha Brooks says rising rates will take a toll. Variable rate mortgages will be more expensive. Costs for new fixed rate mortgages are also much higher.
These low rates are now gone. They're totally off the table, and people just have to be more aware of how much this is going to increase their costs per month.
That's giving buyers some pause, prompting a cooling in parts of Canada's housing market.
And a lot of people are kind of just sitting back and waiting because they don't really know how much this is going to affect them or how low the market is going to correct.
The rate hikes come as the central bank moves to tame inflation, which is hammering Canadians at the gas station and the grocery store. There are some global factors causing inflation, from the war in Ukraine to supply chain issues. The central bank can't do much to fix those, but it can raise rates to slow domestic spending, though it'll take time for those hikes to have an impact.
No matter how we slice and dice it, inflation is going to remain uncomfortably high throughout the remainder of the year.
Today, the Bank of Canada said to tackle inflation, it's prepared to act more forcefully if needed. A signal that more rate hikes are on the horizon. Another challenge for Canadians like Marsh.
We were probably 8 years away from retirement. Yeah, and now we're looking at 18.
With rising rates and high inflation, pushing plans for many further out of reach. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
All right, let's get Colette into the picture now. And when we were having our morning meeting, Colette, you mentioned that we'd have some active weather today. And just as you said that, I looked outside, there was lightning and thunder, and you were absolutely right, on cue.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Chris, this is what you get into when you have these transition days. So we're going to lose the sticky and hot air mass, and another cooler, more comfortable one is moving in, but those two together, they don't battle it out so well, and it leads to this active weather. And in fact, that humidity kind of fuels it. So we're looking at our temperatures as this is a transitional day, not in the 30s, but not back to seasonal. These are what our readings look like. Do we still have some humidity? Yes, the humidex values are still up there, but those dew points will be coming down. Now, in terms of the active weather, we're seeing it pushing now across southern tiers of Lake Ontario and moving away from the Golden Horseshoe. In fact, I can give you the current image of where it is. Yes, so well off after some heavy rains, strong winds, and significant rains into eastern Ontario. Now, if we roll this back 6 hours, you can see how right around lunchtime, there it is, that development, and just really blew up. Plus, it continued into eastern Ontario, and that's why some areas there over 50 millimeters of rainfall. Now, what is left in terms of watches and warnings? Still severe thunderstorm watches in a few areas as this is moving out, but we'll see these dropping. However, rainfall warning carrying on to sections towards Kingston, Tweed, Belleville, Gananoque, through that region, because there may be up to 75 millimeters or more in some cases there. But what do we get? We get into some clearing overnight tonight. We'll still have some cloud cover and a little bit of instability, so kind of variable skies tomorrow. What I mean is I think we'll have sun early, then the clouds roll in, it becomes mostly cloudy, and then later afternoon. Keep in mind, the sun doesn't set now till almost 10 o'clock. Not quite, but almost. So there'll be some good clearing into the afternoon and evening to enjoy tomorrow with the comfortable temperatures, Chris.
I love these longer days.
Me too.
Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
Turning now to an audit of the City of Toronto that's revealed the city paid the owners of hotels that were turned into emergency shelters during the pandemic nearly $15 million more than what was required. Talia Ricci with reaction to the report tonight.
For someone living in a shelter hotel, it's a difficult number to grasp.
My jaw dropped.
According to a report from the city's Auditor General, the city overspent by $14.9 million over 2 years on emergency shelter hotels.
$15 million gets an awful lot of apartments for an entire year. And like actual apartments, which is why most people who are on the streets or in the shelter system, that's what they need.
The report shows the misspent millions could have actually paid for about 52,000 room nights, as well as meals and support services for an entire year. Instead, the auditor says the money went to things like vacant rooms and facility surcharges added to meal invoices. Last year, more than 200 unhoused people died in Toronto.
To me, this is a scandal. To me, it's a scandal of a human level. How did this happen? We should be absolutely outraged.
The chair of the city's audit committee agrees that's an important question to answer.
Everyone understands that during COVID, it was a time of duress for the city. But there's an old saying, haste makes waste. And although we have a chance to go back and reflect on this, we want to learn to make sure that we don't repeat these mistakes in the future.
The auditor recommends the city develops a proper system for reviewing its invoices to make sure payments match contract terms, and that the shelter management information system is updated so that it accurately reflects contracted room capacity.
Toronto Mayor John Tory said in a statement that city staff will be acting on the recommendations, including doing everything they can to recoup the costs that shouldn't have been charged to the city, adding this is why the city has an Auditor General.
But I would say to Mayor Tory, that's what our senior officials are for, our city managers, our general managers, to do a better job.
The report is expected to be discussed by the Audit Committee next week before reaching City Council on June 15th. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
In British Columbia, adults will be allowed to possess small amounts of some illicit drugs starting next year. The federal government announced the dramatic shift in drug policy yesterday to explore further harm reduction. There's a similar push here in Toronto, and Ali Chiasson checked in on that request.
Toronto's top doctor weighs in on BC's move to decriminalize some drugs.
Hearing this move is, a positive step in the right direction and an important step, I believe, in the right direction.
For 3 years starting January 31st, 2023, residents in BC can have 2.5 grams of opioids, cocaine, methamphetamine, and MDMA on them and not be charged with possession. It's a trial run.
That certainly gives us hope that we will have a positive response to our efforts as well.
Dr. Davila wants to see a similar exemption here. The city's Board of Health is waiting for approval from Ottawa.
Since we've submitted our exemption to Health Canada, we've had regular conversations and updates with Health Canada as we're working on what we believe is a solution that's specific and will meet the needs of Toronto.
What amount of drugs can people have on them without being charged? What kind of rehabilitation will be made available for people? All things that have yet to be decided. Take it from the city's frontline harm reduction workers, those details matter.
Criminalization is really a huge barrier to people accessing the supports that they need to prevent those deaths.
I have cared for many people on the streets, in shelters, people who are using drugs, who have fallen victim to a toxic drug supply and have literally died.
They see people dying alone, those who hide their addiction for fear of being discriminated against and thrown in jail. So whether Toronto gets a decriminalization trial run, or depending on how the election goes, the provincial government in power asks for one, Dr. Nahid Dosani says the right people need to be consulted.
Some voices at the table that are getting a lot of opportunities to speak, and they're being heard, and that's particularly the policing community. But why are we not hearing more from people who use drugs, and why are they not at these tables more frequently? It certainly begs some very important questions.
This is really a health issue and not a criminal issue.
Toronto's medical officer of health echoes that.
That the situation that we're dealing with is a health issue, not something for criminal justice.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
A second case of monkeypox has been confirmed in Toronto. Public health officials confirmed the case yesterday. 7 other possible cases are also under investigation. The city reported its first confirmed case of the disease last Thursday. Monkeypox is a rare disease that comes from the same family of viruses that cause smallpox. Officials say it generally does not spread easily between people and is mainly transmitted through prolonged close contact. Toronto City Council doing some housekeeping today, filling vacant positions after the recent departures of some longtime city councillors.
I am suggesting to you to support me for the job of filling in for the next 5-6 months as the Ward 10 councillor.
And that, of course, is Joe Mihevc making a successful pitch to return to City Council. Mihevc is a former veteran councillor, and since 2018, he's been a university instructor and also worked as a consultant with the private sector. He'll be filling the vacancy in Ward 10, Spadina, Fort York, where Joe Cressy was the councillor before stepping down last month. Also today, Robin Buxton Potts was appointed to fill the vacant seat in Ward 13, Toronto Centre. That's the seat formerly held by Kristen Wong-Tam. Wong-Tam left her position to run as an NDP candidate for this provincial election. A Hall of Famer has been named GM of Toronto's pro women's hockey team, the Toronto Six. Canadian hockey legend Angela James has taken over the role, and as Greg Ross reports, she says she is ready to lead the team into the future.
James straight in on Sarah Teeding. Deke, score!
Angela James is one of the pioneers of women's hockey, considered Canada's first female hockey superstar.
The Hockey Hall of Fame is
and she's one of the first women to be inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Now she has a chance to take her team and league to new levels.
Hopefully one day we will be the best hockey league for women, pro hockey, ever.
James first joined the Toronto Six last season as an assistant coach. Then in March, she became a part owner. Today, she stepped into the front office as general manager.
I thought that this might even be a better fit for myself, coming off of my experience in sport administration, working at Seneca College for 35 years.
In the slot, Woods takes the shot, score! Returning players like defender Taylor Woods got to know James well last season as a coach.
Having her as even a defense coach last year, now changing to that GM position, I'm thrilled about it. She knows the players, she knows what it means to be a player and what the players want, and that's sort of what you want as a voice in that position.
The Premier Hockey Federation is the first women's league to pay its players. There were no leagues like this back when James played in the 80s and 90s. But she says there's more to being a pro than just getting paid. And she says she's going to make sure her players have the resources that she didn't.
Nutrition, in terms of training, health and fitness coaches, mental coaches.
The salary cap in the league is $750,000 per team. That is one of the areas James hopes to help grow.
We need the sponsorships and the people and the investors to invest in women's hockey so that they can make a salary that they don't have to worry about working part-time and playing hockey.
The new season for the Toronto Six begins in October. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. There is controversy brewing tonight over Tim Hortons' ordering app after a 2-year investigation determined the coffee chain used that app to track its customers and violated privacy laws. Yvette Brend has this report.
The Federal Privacy Commissioner looked into the mobile app and decided that it was collecting too much information from customers of Tim Hortons, and without their proper consent. That investigation wound up this year. It was actually from a time around 2019 when this information was being collected.
If government wanted to track you on a 24/7 basis using an application, we would think that would be completely outrageous and unacceptable. And surely the same, I think, needs to apply to any company who shouldn't be tracking your every movement and your whereabouts.
The app was tracking people using geolocation data, where they went, even after the app was turned off, where they went when they were in Tim Hortons, where they went after they were in Tim Hortons. And most people just use the app to earn points for coffee or donuts, and were a bit surprised by this. They had no idea. Tim Hortons collected this granular location data for targeted advertising, but it never used the data for those purposes. It stopped collecting that data in August of 2020 and agreed to delete the data. Now there are calls to toughen Canadian laws around data collection. As of now, Tim Hortons faces no fines, but there are 4 class action suits that have been launched in connection with this app, and those will make their way through the courts. But it is a tough bar to reach within the court to determine that there's been an infraction. So for now, the federal government is looking at putting some teeth into those data collection laws. Yvette Bren, CBC News, Vancouver.
Taking you now to the skies, and discount airliner Flair is being allowed to continue flying in Canada. The Canadian Transportation Agency says the company meets domestic ownership requirements. The ruling means the Edmonton-based carrier can keep its operating license. Canadian law says domestic airlines cannot have any more than 49% foreign ownership. There were concerns that Flair's relationship with a Miami-based investor might violate that requirement. Flair has made a number of changes as a result of the investigation, including a promise to increase the number of Canadians on its board. More than 30 other air carriers had been calling on the regulator to rule against Flair. The cleanup continues from severe storms that tore across parts of Ontario and Quebec over the Victoria Day long weekend. And as the lights come back on, some homeowners are finding holes in their insurance coverage. Dan Takema has the story.
I'm expecting a sizable bill. I don't know.
Bob Carberry's power came back around 2:30 a.m. Monday, but that doesn't mean his storm recovery is over. There's still a large tree hanging over his house, and the cost of running a natural gas generator for the past 9 days hanging over his head.
I don't know what it's going to be, but I expect it's going to be in the thousands.
He's been told that bill won't be covered by insurance. The Insurance Bureau of Canada says whether fuel for a generator would be covered depends on the policy and the amount of coverage a person has.
It's a matter of being patient right now to determine what is covered and what isn't covered. It's not uncommon for people to expect delays for this large an event.
Carberry says his insurance also won't help with the tree hanging over his home and will only pay to remove part of another that landed on the back roof.
A tree like the one behind me normally isn't covered because it's not touching the house yet. The one in the back is touching the house, and all they'll do is remove the portion that touches the house and then throw the rest in the yard, and we deal with it. But I don't think most people know that or expect that. They expect that things are going to get covered.
Thomas confirmed Carberry is right. If a tree has fallen in someone's yard, an insurance policy won't cover its removal. A short drive away in Grenfell Glen, the generator outside Nabila Awad's home has been running almost non-stop. Over 9 days later, she spent more than $360 on gas. She's been saving her receipts and got good news when it comes to coverage.
It's pretty costly, yeah, but my insurance, thank God I have good insurance. They're paying for all my gas and paying for ordering out food and whatever because we have no water.
In the meantime, the 70-year-old says she's been relying on those around her for help.
Thank God we have good neighbors. They give us all the water we need, and I just think it's so touching that they're such good people.
Dan Takema, CBC News, Ottawa.
Meanwhile, a lot of small businesses are struggling in the wake of that storm, and many were just starting to get back on their feet as COVID-19 restrictions were easing. But some owners are finding creative ways to keep their doors open and the lights on. Natalia Goodwin shows us how.
This is how a vape shop in Nepean is staying open. Car batteries to run the router for their payment machine, the fire alarm, and open sign. They switched to battery because the $50 a day to run a generator started adding up. They're getting by, but it hasn't been easy.
It's been a nightmare nonstop, so we did lose power at 2 other locations. This one's the only one that hasn't come back yet, and it's literally just been a struggle nonstop trying to keep it open, and more so just for the customers. It's not even about losing money in terms of revenue. It's more so about making sure customers around have accessibility to our products.
For Vivian Doe, the last week has been more April showers than May flowers. Her flower shop's fridges sit empty. Instead, she's been picking up fresh goods from her supplier each day and bringing them back to her shop to assemble. Hard work in the dark, and at one of the busiest times of year, prom season.
It's been really hard. Last week I have a prom. Some of them they cancel and some of them they still keep order. And I've been working in the dark place, and making croissant is not easy.
Hydro Ottawa hopes to have power return to the whole city by Friday, a welcome change for these 2 businesses who hope to see this usually busy commercial street bustling again. Natalia Goodwin, CBC News, Ottawa.
While we continue tracking the fallout of that deadly storm here in Canada, Colette, you're also continuing to track that deadly storm through Mexico.
Yeah, we're looking at some energy here, Chris. I mean, today is June 1st. It is the first day of hurricane season for the Atlantic Basin. It's a long season, 6 months, so it goes till the end of November. But we're looking at some of this energy now off of the coast of the Yucatan of Mexico, okay, just a bit east or south of Cuba, and that is beginning to show development. In fact, it has a 70% chance becoming tropical storm within the next 48 hours, according to the National Hurricane Center, and an 80% chance over the next 5 days. So if it doesn't happen in the next 48 hours, it's likely going to happen as it continues to gain strength. Now, that becoming the first named storm, what would that be? It would be Alex. That's the first one for this season. And in terms of that development and the spaghetti tracks that we look at and where it might go once it forms, well, looking at that energy, perhaps not fully in agreement, but quite a few agreeing that it would be going towards southern Florida, where they could be seeing, as we get towards Friday and into the weekend, extreme southern Florida from the Keys up towards Miami, over 150, perhaps even over 200 millimeters of rain. Even if it doesn't develop into a tropical storm, that's what we're looking at. Just to give you a little review of what NOAA is saying in terms of what they're thinking for this season of 2022. They do think it is going to be another above average. This will be the 7th year in a row where they've thought it would be above average. And keep in mind, last year there were 21 named storms, so thinking we could be in that range again when 14 would be closer to average. And also just leaving with those major hurricanes, those really destructive ones, 3 to 6 possible, and that's anything of a category 3 or higher. Let's bring it back home. We've had some active weather here, all of that moving out of the province, seeing some improvement, the temperatures and how it feels in terms of the stickiness of the air mass. Still have a humidex of 30, but we'll be watching that coming down. Even overnight tonight, you'll notice more comfortable for sleeping. You can see all those storms racing away, still a little bit into eastern Ontario, but we've been seeing those severe thunderstorm watches be lifted. The heavy rain has been into eastern Ontario, but elsewhere we've had rain plus the winds as those storms rolled through. Overnight, we get some clearing, but then clouds coming back in midday tomorrow. An isolated shower is possible, but really we'll be getting into a trend where the second half of the day tomorrow will get better, and a lot of sun into Friday, the odd isolated shower chance there, and we'll see those temperatures really comfortable over the next few days here, Chris. It's looking good.
A good day to play hooky on Friday, it looks like.
Yes, good idea.
Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
In British Columbia, 15 protesters are being charged with criminal contempt for allegedly defying an injunction protecting the construction of a pipeline. The pipeline's route runs through Wet'suwet'en territory. The protesters camped on the construction site last fall, arguing the project trespasses on unceded Indigenous land. The company behind the Coastal GasLink pipeline says it received all the permits needed to build it, but the chiefs of the First Nations say they never gave the company permission to build on their land. Indigenous leaders met with Roman Catholic officials in Winnipeg today to discuss the Pope's upcoming trip to Canada at the end of July. The Pope is expected to deliver an apology to residential school survivors.
He's coming to Canada. He's coming to treaty land. And he has to say, I am sorry for what happened to your people and your children.
He'll do the right thing, he'll say the right thing, whatever that ends up being, because he really wants this to be a step forward, a step in the whole healing process.
The Pope is set to visit Edmonton, Quebec City, and Iqaluit while he's here in Canada. Now to the UK, and this is the eve of special Platinum Jubilee celebrations for the Queen. 4 days packed with pomp and pageantry to honor the monarch's historic 70-year reign. Chris Brown is in London with more on the final preparations.
It seems Britain is ready for a party that's been 70 years in the making. The bunting and banners are hung, and outside of Buckingham Palace, the stage for the Jubilee concert and pageant is ready for the performers.
Don't cut the corner.
Including a giant dragon called the Hatchling.
And go.
It's controlled by 30 puppeteers, including Mikey Brett, who also entertained the Queen at her last Jubilee a decade ago.
It's quite exciting because she loves animals and she seems to really enjoy puppetry performances, and especially things of this scale seem to really excite her.
She's the size of a double-decker bus because she's the first human-powered puppet of that size. That means she's not got a car or a crane.
The government here is giving everyone an extra-long 4-day weekend to celebrate and is spending more than $40 million Canadian on festivities and thousands of street parties for what it's calling a once-in-a-generation event. A minority here, however, will not be celebrating what this critic calls a royal reality TV show.
I mean, it's a kind of a bargain basement Kardashians, state-funded.
Graham Smith's group, Republic, is urging people to make this Jubilee the last one. These posters feature next in line Charles, his son William, but someone vandalized the photo of Prince Andrew, who's been tarnished by sexual assault allegations.
They are just going to be three very ordinary blokes who just happen to be in a very privileged position, and I think people are going to look at them and they aren't going to see someone who is royal or magical or whatever it is they might see with the Queen.
A recent poll suggests the royalty naysayers, though, are outnumbered by pro-monarchy fans 2-1. Some of them have already staked out the most prized locations to see the Queen wave to her admirers from the palace balcony on Thursday. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
In the United States, a jury has awarded actor Johnny Depp $15 million U.S. in his defamation lawsuit against his ex-wife, Amber Heard.
Do you find that Mr. Depp has proven all the elements of defamation? Answer, yes.
Depp claimed Heard wrongly accused him of domestic abuse in a Washington Post op-ed, which did not name him. He sued his ex-wife for $50 million, and she countersued for $100 million. So $15 million was awarded to Depp, but the jury agreed with one of Heard's counterclaims that she was defamed by a lawyer for Depp and awarded her $2 million in damages. The verdicts bring to an end the televised trial, which began on April 11th and has garnered intense public interest. It saw both sides presenting detailed accounts of their tumultuous 5-year relationship, each accusing the other of emotional, verbal, and physical abuse. We're going to take a quick break, but as we go, here's a look at where the markets closed today. The TSX slipped by 15 points. The Dow closed down by 176 points, and the dollar traded slightly higher today, just over 79 cents U.S. We'll be right back. Returning now to our top story tonight, tomorrow's provincial election, and Metro Morning host Ismaila Alpha went to meet some young people near the University of Toronto who are eager to go and make their voice heard at the ballot. And many of them list similar concerns as their top issues.
I think a lot of issues that are on the minds of young people these days, equality, making sure people have access to resources that they need.
There's a lot. I think something that I'm really passionate about is education. We're at U of T right now, so I think I'm really interested in seeing what's going to be done in the future for that.
Education mostly, and healthcare.
Definitely equality, environmental issues. I know, looking at COVID and how different parties handled that. we're lucky enough to have the right to vote, so I think that we should all take the opportunity to vote.
What could be better done to transition or to turn that engagement into actual votes at the ballot box?
I think just speaking directly to the issues that young people face, making them feel as if their voice is important, that it's definitely important if they want those issues to be addressed, to go to the polls and to put people in power who will actually follow through on their promises and make those changes happen.
The Democratic Engagement Exchange and its goals is really to contribute and create the inclusive, vibrant democracy that we have here in Canada. And right now, with the Ontario elections coming up, we are really engaging with community organizations to encourage their community members to go out there and vote and advocate for what matters to them.
So you've been engaging young people around this election. What have they been telling you are the issues they're concerned with?
Yeah, so many issues such as affordable housing, healthcare, education, and most recently, as you may know, equity and anti-racism and anti-LGBTQ+ violence, really what matters to them.
Now, the youth vote, I mean, that's a big block of voters. What type of difference could that make in politics here?
I think it could really make a big difference. I think youth's voice is very, very powerful, especially with our youth today. So we've been really encouraging young generation to go out there and vote, and I think it will really make or break the election.
My top issue, I would say, is electoral reform, and then also climate change. Like they're sort of, I think they go together. For me personally, it's like cost of living. Housing is very expensive.
I don't care what party you're voting for, have your voice be heard. And don't worry about who's going to win. Worry about having your voice heard and represented at the ballot.
My job right now is to encourage everyone who can vote to go vote, because that's something I can't do yet. I live here, I work here, my life is here right now. I think the most important thing is that if you can vote, go vote.
What runs through your mind then when you meet someone who can vote but isn't going to because they just don't feel that any of the parties offer anything to them?
I think that's really valid. I think voter exhaustion and fatigue when it comes to choosing a party and getting tired of politics in itself, that's a valid choice, especially after the past few years that we've been through. But I think understanding that it's bigger than all of us, it's bigger than an individual, and actually like going through the time and learning what the different parties stand for and voting is important. It's still important, but I respect their choice if they don't want to vote.
And what is your suggestion to them, though, for figuring out where they're going to place their vote when they feel that no one is offering anything that they're interested in?
I think first, look at the candidate of your particular riding. Who are they? And look up who they are, what their specific policies that they want to do, and then move on to the rest of the party. And then check who they are as well. I think we need to start where we are at locally and then move on to broader things from there.
Welcome back. A company in Japan has developed its first four-legged robot that it says can help with the country's labor shortage in rural areas. I want to show you Bex, named after the wild goat species, the ibex. It features curved horns and can walk on all fours over rough terrain. The wheels are tucked in its underbelly for traveling on smoother surfaces, and apparently it can carry loads of up to 100 kilograms. Very interesting. All right, back here at home, the Pride flag was raised at Toronto City Hall this morning, kicking off a month of Pride celebrations, and Mayor John Tory highlighting the Pride Progress flag.
This is the first time we've raised the Progress flag here at City Hall. The Progress flag includes black and brown stripes to represent two LGBTQ+ communities of color, and baby blue, pink, and white stripes to represent the transgender communities. And this flag, this Progress flag, will fly here through the month of June.
And of course, this is the first time in 2 years the GTA will come together to celebrate the queer community. Pride organizers say they are getting more registrations than ever before for the parade that is on June 26th. And Colette, beautiful as always, especially this dress. I can't imagine it was any sort of coincidence.
Oh, nope. Of course.
I love it.
Of course. Love to support. Now I realize I'm missing the baby blue and the pink in the white. Well, we'll have to add that in here as well. Hey, let me just show you what we have left here for the severe thunderstorm watch. Yes, in this area, just over towards Picton and Sandbanks. Still one area just holding on. I think that's going to be lifted very soon, but I think what Environment Canada is looking at is just maybe getting tagged by the remnants of that cell going by. So hang in there. That will be lifted. One more little bout to go through there, and then this is really all clearing off to the east. Now, we get a lot of clearing overnight tonight, but not fully. So I think we'll get some sun early tomorrow morning, and then midday, a lot of cloud cover coming back in, and then clearing again into the afternoon after, say, 3 o'clock or so. So things will then really improve, and certainly in terms of that humidity, finding improvement. 12 tonight for the low, 21 for that high for tomorrow, and on Friday, looking at sunshine and 24, and probably you're noticing that the weekend for festivities is looking pretty good there as well, Chris.
Oh, it looks absolutely great. And tonight, finally a good night to keep that window open a little bit.
Yes, exactly. Comfortable sleeping weather.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
And that is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. A reminder, tomorrow is the big election, and we will have all of your coverage right here on CBC. We'll see you there.